Hello and welcome to another episode of Onesies, a podcast where we discuss one season wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew.
And my name's Emily.
And this is the first episode of season 2 where we will be discussing Freaks and Geeks.
Freaks and Geeks, 1999. Was it on NBC, I think, at first? Yeah, NBC, 1999 to 2000. For some reason, I had in my mind that it was on Fox, but they originally aired 12 episodes, but there are 18. I'm sorry, I forgot that there were so many. It was created by Paul Feig, who is a big famous person everybody knows. Judd Apatow was the executive producer. He wrote some of the episodes with a bunch of other people. It launched the career of a dozen probably young actors. And I think we should probably start with that because there's a lot of people in this show that are regulars.
It's more surprising who isn't famous now.
Yeah.
When you see somebody who's not a famous actor. But yeah.
So the main character is Lindsay Weir, played by Linda Cardellini. She's fantastic in so many things, but also in this. And her brother, Sam Weir, played by John Francis Daley. And then the titular freaks, played by Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, Busy Phillips, and James Franco. I'm sure we have plenty to say about James Franco. And the other geeks, including Sam Weir, are Martin Starr and Sam Levine, who are famous in their own right nowadays. Not as famous as the freaks side of the coin here. And kind of the plot of this first episode. Well, do you want to talk about James Franco? Do we want to just get this James Franco talk out of the way?
It seems early considering the first episode is not full of rape culture, but the second episode is. So we can just wait.
We can just wait and talk about that later then. I'll just cut that out then. So the first episode is essentially an introduction to all of these characters. And it's presumably the week before homecoming in 1980 in a fake high school in suburban Detroit, Michigan. And everybody's deciding whether or not they want to go to homecoming. But at the same time, we discover our main character, Lindsay, is having a bit of a teenage crisis where she had been a geek. She was a mathlete, academic decathlon, gets good grades, is an all-around good girl. And she decides, and we discover later why, that she wants to become a member of the freaks, i.e. James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, and Busy Phillips, who, they smoke and drink and cut class and do drugs and kind of the bad kids.
They play the drums.
Play the drums.
They also... This is kind of hard because, the second episode sort of reveals a bunch of things that maybe should have been introduced in the pilot, but there's also a class thing going on. Yeah. Lindsay and Sam are bourgeois. Dad is a shop owner. And so presumably the other kids are working class, though I wasn't really sure when I saw Jason Segel's house. It doesn't seem like he's got a comparatively working class house on his private street with the white picket fence running on the other side.
Yeah.
But who knows? So yeah, there is that there's sort of a class implication in there too. And then, it's the beginning of the pilot before. So the homecoming dance gets introduced by the parents, which...
So the parents, I'm just going to get this out of the way because this is the first of one of many, and he's in all the episodes. But Becky Ann Baker plays the mom, Mrs. Weir, and Joe Flaherty of SCTV fame plays the father, who's Harold Weir, I think is his name. And Joe Flaherty is just hilarious and ridiculous. And he's just a wonderful addition to the cast. I could just talk about him all day, but I'll have more as the seasons go on. He's very funny, but a little bit protective of his children. And he's got a reason for them not to get into trouble. And it's because he knew somebody who did that once who died. And it's hilarious. And it's presented in such a ridiculous way. But I absolutely love it. Some other guest stars are in this too that we could talk about a little bit later, maybe. Did you have three?
No, we'll be talking about Ben Foster.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will.
And don't forget Dave Gruber Allen. We can't forget Dave.
I don't know who that is.
Oh my God.
So the first thing I started to talk about is two things. So Ben Foster will be one of mine. My other one is I hate disco. I'm a racist white cishet. And then my second one is Jabba the Hutt reference bullshit. So
I have Under the Stands, Bill Murray Worship, and Homecoming.
Yes.
Those are my three things. So we're introduced to the freaks when the camera pans very hilariously from a sort of takedown of, I think, sort of modern teenage dramas where a cheerleader and a football player are sitting up in the stands during football practice, having a very serious and dramatic conversation about how much they love one another. And then the camera kind of pans down to underneath the stands, which rings very, very real to me, where the freaks are hanging out, smoking, and talking about wearing a Molly Hatchet t-shirt to church, and not being welcome in church because of the grotesque nature of the t-shirt. That rang very, very true to me. I was not a freak, but I did hang out with people who were of that milieu, let's say. But playing Under the Stands, when I was in middle school and like elementary school, we would go to high school football games, small town, no stakes. So I would pay my $5 and just run around under the stands with my friends. I really, really liked that. But I also hated football in high school. And I still have a deep, deep distaste for it. So that would be the first place I would go if I was forced to go to a high school football game, is go hang out under the stands and talk to interesting people who were more concerned with silly, goofy stuff and smoking cigarettes, even though I probably wouldn't smoke myself, than watching football or watching football practice. So that was something that rang very, very true to me, watching these weirdos under the stands. And then we do we very quickly cut to the geeks kind of walking around the corner? It's sort of like a one uncut scene, like a one fluid motion, right? Where then
the introduction is, and then Lindsay, the sister, defends Sam and his friends from Sam's bully.
But
and the two plot.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the two plots sort of work out to be. Homecoming is sort of in the background, but Lindsay's plots are befriending the freaks, and then her homecoming dating thing that we'll talk about.
Yeah. And then the geeks.
The geeks have, Sam actually has sort of a romance subplot that comes out of nowhere for him, but also the situation with the bully is escalating.
Yeah.
And so they're actually going to deal with it in this episode. And
the first thing we hear from the geeks are doing impressions of Bill Murray from Caddyshack, yeah, which also rings very true to me, because I think between Freaks and Geeks, I was more on the geek side. And I had, when I was in high school, male friends who maybe they didn't worship Caddyshack, but it was Monty Python, and which they also talk about, I think, in this episode, going to see Monty Python and the Holy Grail back to back, like twice in a row, instead of going to Homecoming, which is why mom and dad forced them to go to Homecoming. And it's silly and it's hilarious. And Sam Levine is so good. Sam Levine plays Neil Schreiber. And then Martin Starr's character is Bill Haverchuck. And we'll talk about Martin Starr more later.
Such a baby. He's such a baby.
He's such a baby.
Hilarious.
But he is like perfect. And as the series goes on, his character develops a little bit more. And he's the best part of the show. He's the best part of the show, in my opinion. But for now, they're talking about Bill Murray, and their bully comes up and starts to escalate. And then Lindsay saves him from getting beat up by the bully. And also with Lindsay, so because she's trying to join the Freaks, this is so complicated. It's 44 minutes or 43 minutes or whatever. And so there's a lot going on in her trying to befriend the Freaks and sort of shake things up a little bit. She rejects her previous life and kind of her previous friends, which is sort of sad. But again, that will come around again in the future. So it's kind of sad. But her, right before that first commercial break, I know you had some issues with the very obvious commercial breaks in this. She says, I hate high school. Yeah, she's like, oh, I hate high school. And it was so funny because, who didn't hate it?
Yeah. Spoiler for the second episode. Based on the pacing of this episode, I would believe that this was originally broken out to be a feature. Oh, and really? They turned it into a TV show just because of the pacing of it.
Yeah. My understanding,
a lot in here.
My understanding is that Paul Feig had written a pilot, and they took it to shop it around, and Judd Apatow and hired some other writers, and they rewrote the first episode. So it could have very well have been.
It's also a DreamWorks show, which I wasn't aware of.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So then let's see. Do we meet the parents? Yes. That's where we get to hear about how somebody saw her smoking, and
we get a sense of her relationship with her parents, where she's like, if I was smoking, I would tell you. So she's like a goody two shoes,
you believe her?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I assumed she was lying. No, why would you if you started smoking, you would go home and tell your parents who were going to make you stop? Like, I don't know. But that's where we get the homecoming dance thing. They need to go to homecoming to, socially mature correctly. And it's when we cut to school the next day is when we get what's his face doing a great Shatner impression. It's that kid to do impressions.
Yeah, he's great. He's really great. And Bill doesn't know what's going on. He's like, what is that? And Neil's response is, who's the cowboy?
John Wayne.
John Wayne. Yeah. He's like, what impression are you doing? Oh, that's John Wayne. And he's like, oh yeah, I can see that. Like, again, it's Martin Starr being just perfect. He's perfectly like clueless and dorky, and it's just wonderful. I love him so much. But again, that'll come back around too. Do we want to talk about Eli? Do we not talk about Eli? So Eli,
I was really excited when I saw Ben Foster was in this episode. I love Ben Foster. Ben Foster plays a after-school special mentally disabled kid who, their plot is out of an after-school special, and it's one of the things that impressed me so much about the pilot is how they eventually get that to a point of real sincerity by the end.
Yeah.
But basically what happens is that, and I assume Ben Foster's not in the rest of the show because he was a movie star real quick after this. He's asking girls to homecoming, and they are rejecting him, lightly teasing
and making fun of him. I'm making fun of him.
And so Lindsay decides she's going to be a female savior, and she says she'll go with him to the dance. And it's very sweet and everything until some of the boys, who she's going to be fucking friends with next episode, so whatever, are making fun of him. Sort of a long form making fun of him, trying to confuse him about politics and things like that for their own amusement. And she takes it upon herself to try to explain to him how they're mocking him.
Yeah, there's good laughing and there's bad laughing.
This is bad, yes.
This is bad
and
laughing.
So it upsets him, and he breaks his arm while running away from her. And yeah, so that gets us sort of to homecoming. We'll talk about what happens there later. But yeah, it's and she gets in trouble with the guidance counselor, and this brings in a subplot about the guy that blackmailing her, trying to blackmail her at one point and stuff like that to be a mathlete. But it's a very it's a traditional TV trope. And I guess it's pretty well handled. By the end, it's a little bit better handled. But it does start to raise the issue my big issue, which is that this is a 1999 take on things. It is not a particularly inclusive take on things.
No.
Which also fits with my I hate disco, I'm a racist white cishet. Like, it's so, I mean, it's not, we'll talk about it next episode, but I mean, I don't watch Euphoria, but I can only assume that I would say that this is more Beverly Hills 90210 than it is Euphoria, which is, also maybe not, because who knows? I don't watch it. But it was sort of uncomfortable because you're seeing sort of a white guy take on a straight white guy take. And I thought Paul Feig was gay, which is interesting. No. I know Judd Apatow isn't. He always talks about those women running his life. But it's very straight, and it's very white, which we'll talk about a little bit next time for the next episode. And the way they handle, like, Lindsay has no character development with her interaction with Eli. It's on pause. After she has her blow up with Eli, her resolution comes at the end of the episode in Homecoming, and it's a fine thing, and it has a nice sincere close to it and things like that. But in between, and I mean, yes, she's a teenager, so it's all about her, but it's also, we also know that that's not true, right? Like, we're not getting a look at her actual reaction to this. We're instead seeing how her guidance counselor is going to basically fuck up the situation.
Yeah.
Or not fuck up the situation, but not help her.
Right. She's, and she's also not being super forthcoming about what is bothering her, which we discover in this episode, I think. Neil asks Sam, like, what happened to your sister? Why is she wearing your dad's army jacket and acting the way she's acting? And it's because their grandmother had died recently. And is it this episode or the next episode where she describes, she's kind of pouting in her bedroom, and she describes that she was the only person alone in the room with her grandmother when she died? Is it this one?
Yeah, that's this episode. That's a really good scene. And it's like really The way the pilot is structured with the two siblings, they're the only home life we get to see, and it really sort of it's like this, they're both in high school and he's presumably a freshman because he's very little.
He's such a baby. They're such babies. It's so cute. Ugh.
And he's just not able to like think about the things she's talking about at this point. And so the second episode actually really sort of retcons that out. Hopefully they get back to it. But so Lindsay's not exactly Breaking Bad, but she's suffered a trauma and no one's acknowledging it. And she doesn't,
But so Mr. Rosso, the guidance counselor, tries to get to the root of it, tries to get her to, what's going on? Is there something wrong in your life? Is there something happening at home? Is it a boy? But she never really admits that she had witnessed this. And so, I don't want to say he's taking advantage of her because I don't think he is, but he's definitely, he's definitely taking advantage of the situation she finds herself in. So she cuts class with
Jason Segel's
character, and she gets caught. Essentially, they get caught by Mr. Rosso, and he essentially forces her to go to the dance, even though she doesn't want to, because none of her cool new freak friends want to go, even to make fun of people, which was how she was trying to sell it to them. Like, oh, I thought maybe you'd go to make fun of people. That sounds fun, right? And she's kind of looking around, and everyone's like, yeah, no. But no, yeah, she hasn't really told anybody until that kind of sincere moment with Sam in her bedroom where she's crying, and I don't know that she's crying, but I think she is. And, I guess it made her reconsider life because, grandma couldn't see a light, she couldn't see anything on the other side, and she didn't want to die, and she died anyway. And she's been a great person her whole life, and she still died. And that could have an effect on a 15-year-old girl,
Yeah. That's also kind of where I saw the sort of feature length plotting versus, because she does have a character arc. We do, it is more for her. It is sort of a character study of her, at least this episode. And then, because Sam's plot is, the bully is a threat, but he's never particularly dangerous in a way. Like, Sam and his friends have come up with a plot to beat up the bully, and it goes awry because a cheerleader wants to talk to Sam. And so he has to hang and talk to her. And so that's, it's cute. It's cute. It's,
it just seems so innocent. It's so innocent. Their little, I can't even call it a flirtation, right? But it's just, right. It's so innocent and sweet and pure. And the fact that this little, he's not a kid, he's a teenager, but he's so small, and he has the guts to like stand there and talk to her and ask her to go to homecoming with him. It's so adorable.
1985. So he was 14. So yeah. And the show really sort of positions Sam and his friends as young, like if the freaks are the baseline, it's sort of, angled down at the younger kids, presenting them a little bit differently, which we'll see in the second episode, though. Anyway, we'll get to it. But and so then you didn't give your three. Yes, you did. You gave your three things.
I did.
But then they get to homecoming, And I'm looking at I'm looking at the Wikipedia and my notes, so it's confusing me.
Yeah, I am too.
They get to the dance, and Lindsay is she working with her friend that she dissed earlier? They're both the girl nerds.
Yeah.
The girl nerds. To cut that. At the table. And there's an actual like nice moment between her and the counselor where the counselor's like, "Oh, I'm such a bastard. I made you come to a dance where you're like having fun."
He's right? Like, and if this is the worst thing that can happen to you, then I'd say your life is pretty good, and she kind of like clicks in her head.
Right. So that clicks for her in her head. And then she sees Eli and they go over and have a dance. Now, what actually makes that like different is that we forgot to mention Kim, the bully, the girl bully. So as part of the Freaks, there's a girl who does not like Lindsay and who bullies Sam and his friends. Is that in this episode or next episode? That's next episode. She bullies his friend. She bullies Sam.
Yeah.
So in this episode, Kim is the one girl who hangs out with the Freaks because James Franco's hot, which is, we'll talk about it next episode. Because it's certainly not for Seth Rogen or Jason Segel, who in this episode go from sort of Dumb and Dumber to Segel all of a sudden being a lot more coherent and thoughtful. But Kim, the bully girl, sees Lindsay, the rich girl, being sweet to Eli and realizing that maybe she's not so bad and there's more like depth to her or something. And it provides a nice close to the episode, which also has Sam and the cheerleader dancing, which is just, it's played as adorable. It's like.
Well, the funny thing is that he's asking for a slow dance. He's going to go in.
Oh, right. And it's
a slow dance, and it's Styx, Come Sail Away. And so the beginning of it is very slow, and maybe he's not familiar with the works of Styx. I don't know. And so he goes and asks her, and by the time they get out on the dance floor, it's changed into like the rock part of the song. And so he's a little bit confused. And then he gets more comfortable and starts dancing. And you see Lindsay and Eli. And it's sort of this full circle thing for both of them. They're both at the dance. They're having fun. Sam has overcome his fear and asked Cindy to dance. And Lindsay has presumably made up with Eli, and they go and have a dance on the dance floor. And Kim is there watching. And like you said, maybe it looks like she has a little bit of a realization that Lindsay's maybe not so bad. And I don't know if you noticed this, but Jason Segel was also at the dance. He was kind of in the background. You never heard him talk or anything.
I didn't
but
notice him.
I thought that was funny after they had said that they weren't going. And that he was going to have a couple guys over who play guitar, and they were going to try to play some shitty 70s rock.
Yes, and Segel had offered to dress up and come get Lindsay from her house so she could ditch the dance, and that got foiled by the guidance counselor catching them.
Yeah. About the pacing, about Ben Foster. Well, I had something written down about Ben Foster, but you like him, so I won't say it. A couple guest stars in this.
You can say it. I'm eventually going to say some things about Joe Flaherty. So,
okay, fair enough. So Ben Foster is married to former Scientologist, what's her name? Laura Prepon.
In real life?
They're married.
Okay.
And they have, I think, 2 kids.
Okay.
She has distanced herself from Scientology, but he's a TM practitioner, and that's transcendental meditation, and that's a little culty too. So that's pretty cool. And then Thomas Wilson is Coach Fredericks, the gym teacher. Biff Tannen.
That was cool to see. Tom Wilson had a huge comeback in the last 5 years, but this is the first time it looks like they tried to bring him back. But yeah,
he was really good. He was really good as the big, dumb, kind of jerky.
Not super jerk,
somebody gets creamed in dodgeball.
Dodgeball. They have a dodgeball sequence, which is like,
again, it's a bunch of different after school specials kind of wrapped up into one, and it's the bully and his friends versus the geeks. But there are more bullies and more geeks than we have seen before, and one kid gets creamed, and it was illegal. Oh, because I think it's Schreiber gets it between me down there, and you know, it's like, oh, that's illegal, you got to get off, and it's some, again, big dumb guy, and the coach kind of taps him on the back and is like, yeah, you big knucklehead, you know, or whatever, and it's like kind of laughing that he hurt this kid. But he was funny. I mean, the character is funny, and again, he comes around again. But my favorite special guest is Dave Gruber Allen, and he's on a few episodes. He plays Jeff Rosso, the guidance counselor. Just
who is he?
So he is just kind of a comedy guy. So he had a couple shows on Comedy Central, the Higgins Boys and Allen, and then he had Naked Trucker and T-Bones, which is also on our list of one season wonders. And he is just like a comedy guy, a writer. He's acted in a few things. Now he lives in like Utah or something, plays guitar. He's a musician. Just naturally very, very funny. And this character that he plays is sort of his deal. His character is essentially that. So you can take these characteristics of Jeff Rosso and place them on Naked Trucker, and it's pretty much the same thing, except one's a trucker and one's a guidance counselor. But he's hella funny. He's so funny. And he's in a lot of episodes of this. So we will see him again, but he's just a genius. He's so wonderful. Not my favorite part about this show, but he's very, very funny. And he will be funny in the future. Oh man, I can't wait. So what else do we have to talk about with this episode?
Jake Kasdan directed it. He's going to direct a bunch of these. I think this was, which one is Jake Kasdan? Let me click and see. He's the one. Okay, so he's the younger Kasdan's son, isn't he? Let me see. Oh no, he did Zero Effect. So this was coming off of Zero Effect. Yeah.
I love Zero Effect. Say what you will. I love it. It's so silly.
The last time I saw it, I remember loving it. And then he'd go on and do Orange County and not write a lot. Well, no, he stopped writing. But yeah, he did Cameron Diaz movies for a while, and now he's doing the Jumanji sequels. So it's a good production, right? Like it's a very professional period high school show, right? Like, yeah.
And so far, all the cast have been really good. Like, I'm not complaining about anybody at this point. I think Busy Phillips plays the kind of snotty bully a little bit. I think she plays it really well, but it like so well, it's a little bit unsettling.
It's going to make a lot more sense in the second episode.
Yeah, and it'll make more sense future episodes as well. But it's just, I don't know. It's unsettling to me. I think my sister kind of acted the same way, or there's some little behavioral thing that she does that triggers sort of my own relationship with bullies, my sister, i.e. my sister. So that was a little unsettling for me, but everybody does a good job. It's well written. Again, the problematic element of Ben Foster playing the mentally disabled high school student, it is a little bit, but
I'm not going to remember it after we talk about the second episode.
Yeah. So. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the second episode, which is called Weirs and Beers.
Beers and Weirs, or Weirs and Beers?
Something like that. Beers and Weirs. The plot of this episode, and I'm just going to skim Wikipedia here. The Weir parents go out of town for the weekend, and Lindsay's new friend suggests that she throws a party. She hesitantly agrees in hopes of impressing Daniel, who we kind of discover she has a crush on.
That's James Franco.
That's James Franco, who has recently broken up with his girlfriend Kim. That was not established.
That was not established in the previous episode.
Yeah.
So that's a big twist, as it turns out, for some character motivation.
Yeah.
And things.
And Sam agrees not to tell on her, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. He enlists his friends to help him kind of mind the party and the partygoers, so nothing gets broken, and so nobody gets in trouble.
The reason that what's his name? Neil really wants to help is because he's been in love with Lindsay since he was 5. So what we're going to see in this episode is the female protagonist of a show being subjugated to being a 13-year-old boy's sort of fantasy object. It's great.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there is some really so what are our 3 things? I don't know how I want to approach this.
So I want to talk about improv.
Okay.
I want to talk about a little bit about J. Elvis Weinstein, one of the writers of this episode. And those are the only 2 things that I have, because I mean, there's just so much more to talk about because there's so much plot in this.
That isn't really important anymore.
And I'd like to talk about Dallas as well.
That was going to be my first thing.
I'm sorry.
Dallas. That's fine. It's fine to watch Dallas, Bill. It's fine.
Dallas rules. Dallas rules. I love that.
So, finally a Pete himself joke that I laughed at, as opposed to our last show. And then I guess the other note is want to slum with the dumb kids. And I have another one that I marked. Pete. Yes, so that's 3. So we just crossed over on Dallas. And then let's at the end, let's sort of give an update on where we're at with the characters and the performances and things like that, because it's a little bit different after this one. Or my next bullet point could just be rape culture. So we could just do that. We could just talk about, So it's a kegger at Lindsay's, basically, with James Franco, Seth Rogen, and Jason Segel. Very excited to invite themselves over and then proceed to invite the entire school.
Apparently,
and to invite 45-year-old men over, which is
like dirtbags too. We're not talking like
statutory rape's okay, actually. Like, saying you're gonna have sex with teenage girls is fine when you're 45. Like, that's what I've learned from watching the show.
It's not okay. It's not okay.
Actually, this episode's a great. This episode's basically like listening to James Franco defend himself of allegations. So, but what happens is that Sam and his friends are. So when Lindsay ducks out on an assembly about drunk driving and the repercussions of drunk driving. And so this is where the episode sort of is like, this episode's very big on making fun of the squares.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's indifferent, apathetic, and eventually cruel about it. But Sam and his friends are really worried that people are going to come over, get drunk, and die on their way home. Or, the blood alcohol poisoning thing's not fucking funny. Like, I've had blood alcohol poisoning, right? Like, so, and the show, the show manages to solve this problem, but then make it worse in a way.
Yeah.
But Sam and his friends have this, or Bill, Martin Starr actually has this great idea, which he's going to mention he takes credit for throughout.
Yeah. My mom, what does he say? Something like, my mom buys non-alcoholic. Yeah, my mom buys non-alcoholic beer when my uncle comes over, so he doesn't get drunk. And it's, again, very relatable to this Midwestern girl with alcoholic people in her family. However, I don't remember anybody in my family ever trying to trick anybody into drinking non-alcoholic beer.
I don't think you can buy non-alcoholic beer in a keg, which I thought was going to be a plot point, but it's not. And that's actually like the thing about it is that
I'm sorry.
What this episode sort of does is it takes away a bunch of Linda Cardellini's agency throughout and sort of makes the character a lot more shallow, which is unfortunate, and which is why I made the comment about 90210 before, because this plays like a less socially responsible episode of Beverly Hills 90210. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a very, like, doing the very special episode would be a little bit more like, you know, responsible with it. Whereas what this does is it just sort of, it's not going to reduce Lindsay to being like going through this weird thing with her grandmother. It's just going to reduce her to being a very flat teenage girl trope. But Sam, on the other hand, gets this great subplot. Like, it's a comedy subplot, right? Like, there's hijinks. There's like, it's a kind of a quest. They convince a liquor store owner to sell them a keg of non-alcoholic beer. And when they tell the guy they're going to do it, the guy's like, hell yeah, kids.
Yeah, he's like on the scheme. I thought that was really funny, even though we don't talk about Alan Covert in my house, but it was a very funny scene. I really liked that he was just some dirtbag. Again, relatable. He looks like somebody that would hang out with my dad, working at a liquor store. At first, refuses to sell them a keg of beer. When they say, "Oh, it's non-alcoholic beer," he's like, "No, that's going to be a no for me." Then they tell him, we're going to switch it with a real keg, so my sister doesn't get drunk at her party. And he's like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this!" You know, it's like, I'm surprised he didn't like load it up into the back of his van.
Right. Could have driven him home instead of have to walk it.
in like a radio flyer wagon. It's so funny. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So they're going to get home and need to switch it out. And so Lindsay has decorated the house to make it seem cool for her party. She's like really looking forward to having her new friends over. And Neil is going to keep her busy, which sort of introduces the nothing burger of the D plot, which is Neil wants to like flirt with Lindsay at the party, and they're supposed to like keep Sam away. It never materialized. Something comes of it, but not because of that plot. Like, that just seems like something for the occasional jokes about like somebody having a crush on Sam's sister.
Yeah.
Which we get a couple times. But what we also get is we get Martin Starr tapping the keg and spraying himself in the crotch with the beer. And
it looks like he wet himself.
It looks like he wet himself, but he does not sort of grok that. So when Lindsay and Neil come in, or Sweater, as I actually have notes, which will come up later because of the scene where Sweater tells the black kid he's got it worse.
God.
So, and then we cut because, you know, it's a show for white people. But then he doesn't know that they think he peed himself.
Yeah.
And it's just this like perfect. And like, it takes Sam a second to get it.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't think, you know, that he was trying to drink the beer. Nothing like that. It's just like, oh, yeah.
Well,
poor Bill.
Well, it's this funny thing where they have been trying to move the keg and not make noise, and they make some big thud in the hallway, and Lindsay's like, Sam, what's going on? Is everything okay? And it's like, yeah, Bill just fell down. And then they make another thud, and I think Neil's excuse is, oh, he's got like an inner ear thing.
Yeah.
He's got an inner ear thing. So, things are happening. So she sees him wetting his pants. And I guess she doesn't know that in an inner ear thing wouldn't make you piss yourself. But she just attributes it to that. She's like, oh, no, Neil told me. No, go. Sam, get him a change of clothes.
Get him a change of clothes. And Sam's funny. Like, why would I get him a change of what?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So, yeah.
And also, Sam's pants would not fit Bill. Sam is so tiny and Bill is so tall.
Bill is giant compared to the other kids.
Yeah.
Like, he's the one who grew and they're the ones who haven't sprouted yet.
Sam Levine still hasn't sprouted. He's a very tiny man.
Okay. So
but I would like to go back really quickly, because my point about improv,
yes, we missed that,
happens at the assembly. So
yes.
At the assembly about drunk driving, there are 3 students, all of whom we've met before. One is Cindy, the cheerleader who Sam has a crush on. One is Millie, and that's Lindsay's friend that she has sort of eschewed. And the third is Harris, and Harris is also a great character, by the way. I was talking to my husband about this, and I was like, I don't know. Harris might be my favorite. He's sort of like the nerd guru. He has all of these deep philosophical thoughts, and he's the one who convinces the geeks in the first episode that they need to face their bully. They need to fight him, get it over with, and then he won't bother you anymore. Like, if you just let him beat you up, he won't bother you anymore. Anyway, so they're putting on.
But let's mention that actually worked for him, because the kid beat him up so bad that he got expelled.
Oh, right.
So, yeah.
That's right. So sorry about that. I do not advocate that advice. I do not think that people should face their bullies. But I also think people shouldn't bully, and I'm just naive. So we start with this opening scene, and there's these 3 actors talking about having a designated driver and and cut to Jeff Rosso after the first scene, the guidance counselor. And it becomes obvious that this is an improvised scene when he starts asking for suggestions, right? What's a kind of party you might be at where there would be drinking? And some kid in the audience yells, sex party. And then he's like, I think I heard birthday party. Great suggestion. First of all, he comes from an improv world. So this is something that he is familiar with as a show business comedy person. A lot of people take improv classes as their way in. And I've seen this sort of, it's a little hacky, but I think it's funny. And the fact that Josh, J. Elvis Weinstein wrote this episode makes me think he wrote that joke because he's also a comedian guy, and stand-up comedian specifically. And I don't know if you know this, that a lot of stand-up comedians hate improv people. And so I've seen this before in other things with other people making improv jokes about how bad it is. And it made me laugh so hard when, that improvisation skill that is necessary for acting, for comedy, for all sorts of things. He puts it into play immediately when the kid says sex party, and he like redirects it. Oh, I thought I heard birthday party. I mean, it's so brilliant and so stupid. So then the kids come back out and they're improvising, and it's like, it's so college improv troupe bad, but they're high school kids and they're teaching a good lesson, and that's very sweet. But I just thought that was a really sweet little comedic moment about improv and just how ridiculous it is and how many different ridiculous ways it can be used. And I had another note about the assembly while we were there. So Cindy, the cheerleader, is up on stage doing something, and Lindsay is sitting, Lindsay is sitting next to Daniel, James Franco. and kind of whispers at her like, oh, that cheerleader's kind of hot. I'd like to get her drunk. And I was like, ugh. But it's rapey teenage boy stuff. Rapey teenage boys will be rapey teenage boys. Huh?
It's fine. That's the correct way that boys should be, obviously. That's what I've learned. And then they're going to sneak out. And that's actually where we introduce the jealous Jason Segel thing that will sort of percolate up later. But they're sneaking out to buy the keg or something. This is also...
They sneak out not to buy the keg. Jason Segel sneaks her out to buy the keg. I forget what she and I forget what
she's just...
They just cut.
Going to smoke. She's just cutting.
Yeah,
she don't care about dead kids. And this is also where we find out that James Franco has invited grown-ups to her party. And she's concerned, but she's certainly not going to do the unpopular thing and get upset in front of James Franco, which we will find out has reasons later. So there's a whole thing about... No, that's kegs. Okay, so are we ready to get to the party?
Let's get to the party.
So the party, and we'll start with Bill is going to camp out in Sam's room and watch Dallas.
While guarding the keg of actual
beer. And so, yes, Dallas, Bill likes to spend his Friday nights watching Dallas. He doesn't want to party. It's all about 9:00 on CBS for Bill.
I have a funny Dallas story. So I remember it as a kid. Just, I don't know, on reruns, maybe even. I don't know if they ran reruns of it, but I went to a wedding in Dallas, and for that wedding, the rehearsal dinner, I'm going to use finger quotes saying rehearsal dinner, was actually a college football game. And the, what is the pre-party called? Because I'm dumb. Like when you go camp out and wait for the game to start. Why am I asking you?
Yeah, I don't know.
So we camped out in front of, AT&T Stadium just south of Dallas, and we watched football. And I was like, God, I fucking hate football. It's been established that I just don't like it. I think it's stupid. I think people get hurt. I think people take it way too seriously and do not take the considerations of their children, getting their heads knocked around for ever. I don't know, whatever. So I was like kind of being petty about it. And I was like, oh, we're in Dallas. We should go to the Dallas house. And I dragged my family to the Dallas house. Essentially, I mean, all it is the outside shot, the helicopter shot. That's all you see. But they have decorated the inside of the house to look like the scenes, like sets from Dallas. It is so stupid. It was so stupid. And it was like nothing I was interested in. I wore a shirt that said, I shot JR. It was really funny. I thought nobody else did. And my mother-in-law just kept asking me like, oh, do you like this show? Did you like it? I was like, I was a child. I was like way too young to know what this show was. I could not explain to her that I was just doing it because I was being petty about having been dragged to a stupid football game. I'm not embarrassed about it because we got some good pictures too, but I don't think they knew that I was really interested in going to the Dallas house. Anyway, that's my Dallas story.
It's unclear if he's actually watching Dallas. There's no recognizable.
Sound like it.
No,
yeah.
It doesn't sound like it. There's a car chase that is a cross-country car chase that actually looks like with cops chasing a car across flatland. It looks like the scene in Close Encounters, actually, when they are chasing him when they're driving to Devil's Tower or whatever. But so that's what Bill's going to do. He's going to hang out in there, and he's going to spend the episode actually getting drunk, which
it's also
again,
very funny.
It's very funny. Again, he's 14 and he's got a keg. How would he have any idea what's going to be too much to drink?
Yeah.
because he doesn't pass out during the episode itself. Mm-hmm. But whatever, we're not going to have, doesn't matter. So the drunk people don't end up mattering in this episode very much.
So in the meantime, the rest of the partygoers who are drinking the non-alcoholic beer, most of them, it finds out, with, thanks to Neil being a dork, the placebo effect, everybody thinks that they're drunk. And Lindsay even mentions a couple of times, like, oh, I'm so wasted, like.
And she's stumbling around.
Yeah.
That raises this really weird thing of like, and they establish later on that somebody knows that they weren't drunk based on their performance playing quarters, which was like a funny punchline at the end. And a nice development for that character. Yeah. But there are 30 people at this party. So it seems like the keg's not going to last that long. No. But also, like, everybody sort of having a mass fake drunk psychosis thing going on gets more and more unlikely as the evening progresses. And also, people are bringing booze, but Sam is hiding it in his parents' room.
Yeah.
Which never is a thing. Like, it's a discarded subplot of something. But so also when the boys get there, when the freaks get there, they don't want to see Lindsay's decorations. They say, I think Seth Rogen's like, what do you think we are, a bunch of hippies? Because it's a bunch of like black light posters. She's just like, no, I just didn't want, my parents' house to seem uncool. But they don't care. They just want to go drink from the keg.
Yeah.
And so eventually Millie's going to show up at the party. So we see more and more people come to the party. There's a scene, and then we get shots of around the party. Like there's Jason Segel sitting on a glass table, and Sam tells him not to, or to be careful with it. And then Neil's in the kitchen talking to a black kid about how it's harder for him to be Jewish than the black kid being black.
And the punchline is, I was elected student council treasurer and I didn't even run. And it was like, Neil.
So there's I'm sure it was really easy to be a black kid in 1981 suburban Detroit.
Yeah, I'm sure
that was a great experience. So, but I mean, hey, there's one person of color in this episode. That's one more than last time.
Yeah.
And then Millie comes over, and she and Lindsay have this moment where Lindsay's kind of mean to her. Like, the problem is that, and we're going to develop it. We're going to, show some more of it, because Millie's going to start singing a Christian song, which becomes ironically cool, but we're supposed to be laughing at her. So it's like, it's just, there's just this cruel thing about the squares, which is deflected bullying. And it just seems kind of irresponsible for 1999. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm older than you, but I feel like we dealt with this on a very special episode of Beverly Hills 90210, where sexual predator Brian Austin Green sort of went through this and things like that. But they at least sort of tried to address it. They're not going to address it here. They're going to immediately turn it into Millie's a fucking obnoxious evangelical.
Okay, so first of all, the Jesus is Just All Right song is a Doobie Brothers song. So yes, it is a Christian song, but it's also a popular band, and it was on the radio. This wasn't just like any Christian song. It's a Doobie Brothers song. Just so you know, it's not like she's taking a church song and playing it on the piano. It's a popular song. That's why
it's a popular song.
Yeah, that's why Jason Segel starts singing along, because he knows the words, because he's the rock and roll guy, right?
I thought it was from his church thing from the last time.
No, it's a Doobie Brothers. It's a Doobie Brothers song. So just to clarify, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, that changes the scene quite a bit.
Yeah.
makes Jason Segel less interesting. Anyway, we'll get to him in a bit. But then the big thing we find out is that James Franco has been spending his time at the party, not getting drunk, but snooping around, looking at all the things in Lindsay's house, including all of her mathlete awards, which he is impressed by, and he doesn't think is anything to be ashamed of. And that's where we sort of get this weird, like, is Lindsay trying to slum with the dumb kids moment? Like, is that her character? Because that's different than...
I don't even think she's trying to slum with the dumb kids. I think that she's diminishing her accomplishments because she doesn't think that they would be impressed by it. And I think it's a bit of a character development moment for James Franco to be like, if I ever won a blue ribbon, I would be so proud of it. Like, it's a little bit of that. I don't think it's slumming with the dumb kids. I just think that these kids don't happen to value education in the same way that she does, and she's trying to just be cool to fit in with them.
I'll agree that it's a James. I mean, the problem with the James Franco character development is that it sort of gets, if not flushed, yes, sidetracked. But yes, and that actually does provide a wonderful opportunity that I'm sure the show won't take to discuss how troubled lower class, working class kids are not going to be given the opportunity to show. Like, the guidance counselor doesn't give a shit about encouraging these other kids to be mathletes. It's middle class Lindsay. So that's an interesting scene. And then we get fighting with grandpa. This is when the adults show up.
So the adults show up, and there's another scene that's just sort of a passing scene where Harris, the kind of geek guru, shows up at the party, and somebody's like, "Aren't you a sober student?" Because he was in the play, and and he was like, "Oh, I just do it to put it on my resume. It looks good for college applications. I guess not resume. He's 16 years old, whatever." But he's doing like a funnel of beer. Like, one of the old guys is pouring beer into this funnel, and he's trying to drink it, but it spills all over the carpet because he wasn't ready.
And so, but when the old guys show up, that's also when Kim gets there, and they establish that they're more than willing to have sex with a 16-year-old girl and put their hands all over her. Yeah. So that's really cool. And so this is after Dazed and Confused. So we already have it doesn't go quite that route that you have
they keep staying the same age.
We don't get that far. We don't actually get to, Leonardo DiCaprio territory, but so that was the one where I was like, oh, so is this actually going to be a serious episode about this stuff? And no, they use the 25 to 52 to 60-year-old men getting drunk with teenagers. That's fine. They're harmless, which sounds about white. And yay, look at me. What's up? I got to say it.
You got to say it.
And it's fucking true. But then we establish that Kim's there so she and James Franco can fuck on Lindsay's bed.
Yeah.
Which is very sad, because the whole reason Lindsay wanted to be a freak is because she's got the hots for James Franco.
Yeah.
Which is a lot less interesting than her feeling listless in her high school life after realizing that maybe there's not anything after that life, and floundering. No, she just thought James Franco was hot, and
she's chasing the bad boy, which is what all teenage girls do. They love their bad boys.
They love their bad boys. And so who tries to take advantage of this? Nice guy Jason Segel. He's not okay just trying to kiss her. He wants to take her boobies out on the street. Yeah. And it's just grotesque. Like, it's not painful because the weirder part is the idea that you're supposed to have some sort of like empathy for Siegel in this point, because then he's like, I'm so drunk. And you're like, you're not.
No,
drunk.
you're not. Yeah.
You're treating this other person like your physical, like you have agency over their physical body, which James Franco already did in that auditorium scene. He snuggles into Lindsay and she's like, oh, he likes me.
Yeah.
Nope. She's just furniture.
So I have to tell you about this Guardian article. I mentioned it before. There was this Guardian article. I have to send it to you. And it was about, this is going to get a little political, but it's about the sex positive movement that's kind of currently happening in the world, and how it doesn't fit into, essentially it's like a couple of women who in their college years were experimenting and being more sex positive people. But what they discovered was that their sex positivity was completely and solely based around men's needs. So whatever activities they were engaging in, it was because the man wanted to do it. And the men were pushing it as like, oh, come on, you're sex positive, let's do this. And it wasn't about actually what the women wanted. It's about what the men wanted. And so I see that in this, where, you know, as a teenager, your hormones are raging, you're confused about everything. Maybe you're a little bit bitchy, and a cute boy puts his head on your shoulder and you're going to be like, oh my God, you know, like, because you don't know what's going on. But it's a little bit that, you know, like he wants to do it, so he's going to do it. And him showing you that affection is sort of exciting, and because you don't know what's going to happen and your hormones and you can't think straight and et cetera, et cetera. So like, it's not an excuse. It's certainly not an excuse to do it. But I think in terms of 1999 television writing, it certainly isn't unusual.
It's not. It's not unusual, but the lack of self-awareness, the lack of wanting to be aware of it at all, is sort of the thing. And we'll see that in the next scene where Lindsay and Neil comes in to comfort Lindsay. And it's all about him. He eventually tells her that he's in love with her and has been since she's 5. And she gives him a kiss on the cheek. So it's all for that.
She gives him a kiss on the cheek because come up with a solution to get everybody out of the house. And
they come up to a solution because they're going to go get a keg, and he hasn't told her yet that it's non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
And so this would bring a real keg into the house. So he's going to call the cops, or she can't do it. When
he admits to her that he's been in love with her since he was 5 years old, she's just sort of like looks at him, and it almost seems like dismissively, like now's not the time for this discussion, right? She thinks she's drunk. She's really upset because she caught James Franco fucking his girlfriend and
on her bed.
And Jason Segel, you know, put his hands on her inappropriately, and he doesn't know any of this. So he's confessing, thinking everything's fine. And I mean, not that everything's fine because she is crying, but not knowing any of this. And she's just like, I can't do this right now. Like, I can't deal with this right now. And he offers to call the cops. That's why he gets a kiss on the cheek.
That's why he gets a kiss on the cheek. But that scene is entirely from his perspective.
Yes.
And entirely for his character development.
Yeah.
And she's not going to get any resolution to anything or development for the rest of the episode.
No.
And so the cops are coming. This is where we find out that Seth Rogen knew that it was fake beer because he made $90 playing quarters this time.
Yeah.
And so then James Franco and Busy Phillips leave, and they give her back the teddy bear that they took off the bed so they could fuck. And they're like, this was great. We should come back more often for your, you know, like
kind of snarky. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then the joke is, and then the final joke in the episode is Bill's passed out on the floor. And we missed talking about it, but Cindy, the cheerleader's there, and Sam wants to talk to her, but it doesn't go anywhere because Sam actually doesn't get any, like, his subplots sort of disappear. They're on the cutting room floor. But Yeah, I mean, I was expecting more based on the pilot. I was expecting a more thoughtful sort of take on this trope. Like, I was not expecting to be like, that's not as good as the Bet 90210 where the kid finds the gun and kills himself. No way. Like, it's not. That's not a good party episode. Sorry.
I liked it. Except for the Jason Segel part, because he's like annoying, but I do find the character besides this rapey bit, I do find the character kind of charming in his dopiness, except like you kind of get a sense in the first couple episodes anyway that we've seen that he's kind of keeping his options open all the time. Like he's always flirting with somebody. Like he's always flirting with some girl. And so it kind of is like, what's happening? It's sort of creepy, but I just find him so dopey and charming. And the Seth Rogen thing, you said, him kind of realizing the booze and kind of builds his character a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Up to this point, he has been just snarky, obnoxious, sarcastic. Like that's the guy he is. And it's
but also incredibly dopey. Like,
yeah.
And to the point that they're like trying to make it a joke how slow he is to respond to things. And we also have found out that he doesn't know who Sam is at this point. But then at the end, they actually have sort of a bonding moment that's like, it's kind of, since it's not rapey like everything else in the episode. It's not like, he's like, wow, can you give me a pair of your sister's panties? No, it's just like, thanks, kid. I want a bunch of quarters.
Yeah.
Right. So that was nice. And then I thought it was nice too. I was disappointed with the resolution with Kim after last episode. But then you have to take into account that not only didn't we know that Kim and James Franco were dating, Lindsay didn't know it either.
Yeah.
So,
which I find a little bit unrealistic because that high school didn't look too much bigger than my high school.
No,
I knew who all the couples were,
And it changes. I mean, it makes the last episode, it explains some of the Kim motivation that like Lindsay actually was trying to move in on her dude, as we've discovered now. And so, but it was kind of, I don't know, it didn't really, like, James Franco and Busy Phillips are not like a great charming couple, right? Like they're just like independently, they're kind of they're unlikable together, right? Like that's some of the point. And so giving them this like weird farewell thing without giving Lindsay a chance to really react to any of it is, and there's no resolution with Millie either.
Right.
Because, okay, so she wasn't singing Christian songs, but
it's a popular Christian song though. But I think that might have been her way of like,
she kept saying she was going to have the most fun there without booze. And so, again, that's something that I feel like in a movie from 1981, you might have been able to make that funny if it were broader. But like drawing attention to what a bad job school guidance counselors do preparing children for peer pressure and alcohol abuse and things like that. And then just drawing attention to what only a rube would be concerned with that kind of thing. And it's just like, can't we do better than this? And,
But she's also a really, really awkward, dorky person. And so while she could just be repeating what she learned from the guidance counselor or from the assembly while she was in the assembly. But I mean, I literally think that it's part of the characterization that she's just goofy and awkward.
It's thin characterization.
Yeah.
So that would be my issue.
Yeah.
That
fair enough.
Yeah. The first episode implied all this great depth to the characters, and this episode implies if there is any depth to them, they're just going to be rapists. Like,
so we talked about in the previous season with the previous show that we watched, sort of like not having an overall story arc because there are so many characters in this show. They don't necessarily each have an episode, but you will see character development with Millie, with Seth Rogen, with Jason Segel, even that maybe will fix some of these issues you're currently having. Maybe, especially the disco one, but that'll wait. No, the Disco Sucks movement was a racist movement. Disco Sucks is racist.
And 100%.
And homophobic, yeah. It was not a good thing. But there's some resolution to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. I'm excited for that.
There's not like a story arc, right, that connects everything, but the characters remain the same. There's not so many gaps like there were in Free Spirit, where just suddenly people forgot previous things.
Let's talk about that gap. The first episode takes place an indeterminate period of time before this episode.
Yeah.
Right. So that's some of what, and that happens with a lot of TV pilots. Like I think the most famous one is ER, where characters have resolution arcs in the pilot, and then they sort of, jump back in the subsequent episodes and things like that. And I think the one I'm thinking of is that Noah Wyle and Eric LaSalle sort of got along by the end of the ER pilot, but then they spent the rest of the show not getting along. Justifiably, because Noah Wyle didn't recognize his privilege, his exceptional privilege. But with this, especially when we're finding out this very pertinent information in the second episode, it just feels like there's stuff that should have been in the pilot and vice versa, right? So I think that's, I have a very high expectation of this. I've been hearing about the show for
23 years.
23 years.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's got a high bar to clear with me. And the pilot, I really like the pilot a lot, except for the commercial breaks. And also, I find Joe Flaherty a little too Canadian for this.
He's from Pittsburgh, dude.
Bullshit. Not believing it. I have a note that says, this is what happens when you allow Canadians to intermarry with Americans.
Oh, I love Joe Flaherty. I think he's funny.
No, actually, regardless of it being funny or not, it's what kind of the problem is that it's an oddball casting in a part that shouldn't have an oddball casting.
Fair enough.
It reduces it's not like it's Bob Odenkirk who's going to bust out some high class dramatics on you amid all the nonsense, right? I'm assuming we're not going to get some rending performance from Joe Flaherty where he worries about his children at any point in this, right? Right. He's not Michael Keaton. So, boom. Anyway, that would have been a fucking great dad. Anyway. So I'm just a little I don't know. I wanted it to be more responsible. I wanted it to be less white guy humor. I wanted it to be less something that James Gunn would do, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't like white guy humor enough for you, Emily.
Sorry, I like it too much for you. I just find it. I just find it incredibly relatable. Because I am a white person. I am from Michigan. I am from a mostly white community.
I didn't go to high school parties like that.
I didn't go to high school parties either, but I knew all of those people. I knew them all in my head. So it was incredibly relatable to me. Yeah.
See, that would be the best case for what a bunch of white teenage boys did when they got together.
Oh yeah, no, there's no way a party would end up not. So Sam is worried the whole time that like people are going to trash the house and he's moving stuff,
and they never do.
And they never do. And you know, in my experience, it might not get like rowdy and out of hand where people are like purposefully smashing shit up, except for maybe those old guys. They looked like they were ready to do that. But something would have accidentally been knocked over because there's just too many people.
There's nothing with it's
nothing except the beer gets spilled when Harris doesn't drink it from them.
But nothing comes of that. I mean, that aspect of it is like Brady, like the Brady Bunch. If Greg threw a party, you'd at least have that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the dirtbags that I knew when I was in high school who were like the freak characters, they were smoking weed and they would smash shit. I mean, they would break bottles and stuff just because they were dumbasses, but they would be drinking real beer. And like you said, I've never heard of non-alcoholic beer coming in a keg before, but I'd never bought a keg before either. It's not my personality.
I don't know. Was non-alcoholic beer a big thing in 81 too?
I have no idea.
So, but that like I said, I was just expecting a little bit more. Like, and I was expecting Lindsay to, like Linda Cardellini is phenomenal in the first episode.
Yeah.
In the second episode, it's like it starts with her being a fucking narc. And then it just gets worse from there. And then she's reduced to, oh, I'm the good girl who just wants the bad boy. And I'm like, I've seen this on Beverly Hills 90210. I've seen it whenever James Franco seems like he's very much playing a Stephen Bauer, Vincent Spano type at this point. Gotcha. And I'm just kind of like, that's just okay.
Yeah.
Probably be better if that's what he'd stuck to, but whatever.
One thing I like about this show as a period piece set in 1980 is I love the cultural references to it being the 80s without it being like hitting you over the head with it. I feel like there are other more contemporary shows that have been praised for, all the 80s references. I'm talking about Stranger Things specifically, but like, all these 80s references, but it's like they're beating you over the head with them just from what I've seen of Stranger Things. I haven't seen a whole lot of it. And it's like, this is so much more subtle and it's like realistic. I've been watching, I don't know if you've been watching, the Hulu show about Elizabeth Holmes. The Theranos thing. And they're just beating you over the head with these like 2010s references. And it's like, I don't need a whole scene about somebody going to buy an iPhone, get one of the first batches of iPhones. Like, I don't need a scene about this. Maybe because I lived it, but it just seems like just so like heavy handed. But this show, Freaks and Geeks, I think handles it a lot better. Just like subtle, the music's on the radio or somebody's going to a concert or something happened in the news. And it's not like making like Forrest Gump, like actually being in the room while Steve Jobs creates the iPhone.
I think that by 99, it had sort of cycled back because when we really got that was Tarantino and Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Was like, and so that was like that was like 94, 95. And it's sort of like had cycled. We'd gotten used to how to do it, right? So you could still make the reference, though I don't think, speaking of the first episode, that anybody in 1981 was so obsessed with Star Wars that they remembered the Jabba the Hutt mention to say that you're like Han Solo trying to avoid Jabba the Hutt. You're like, I don't know who Jabba the Hutt is yet, man. Like, what do you like? It's a throwaway, like. And that actually will show you how much the Star Wars sort of fandom has changed because there's no way it wouldn't be a Han shot first reference if we knew what, or no, we would have known because the special editions were 97.
Yeah.
So that would have been a little bit more on point and realistic. But it's not. And the music does a good job with it. And it's a transition period too, in sort of the culture where Lindsay's talking about all the music they're going to play. And I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to listen to any of that shit. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, we're going to listen to some, or, Jason Segel wants to go see The Wall sober once. And the other guy's like, don't ever do that. And I'm like, that's right. Don't ever do that. Right.
Don't go to a laser light show unless you're on something. Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah. And that's kind of the nice thing about having it with the teenagers is they would be having conversations about pop culture like that. And so, yeah, that is good. Honestly, I have no problem with the plotting of this episode. It's entirely the sort of way it's portrayed, how it's what they don't do with it. Like, you can't, if it had actually had an arc for Lindsay that didn't just require
her body,
a semi-pubescent boy validating her as something besides a physical object, which is just barely doing that. Like, it's just not, I don't know, 1999 is a little fucking late for that, right? Like, and it's bad when you devolve a character so quickly. So I have an open mind, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to say all these things and not, flipping me off with double figures about Joe Flaherty being broad and Canadian, no matter what you fucking say to me. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, please. Pittsburgh, British Columbia.
No, that's fine. And, I'm sure you'll have more to say next time. There's a funny reference in the next episode, but,
to Canada,
not to Canada, but to SCTV. I guess that's Canada to me. I wish SCTV represented Canada. That would be great. Anyway. Okay, great. I think we're done. Unless you have anything else. Want to wrap up?
I'm glad Eli wasn't there or
at the party.
Something.
Yeah.
At the party.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for tuning in. Next time we're doing episodes 3 and 4. That is, I've got Joe Flaherty up. I don't have Freaks and Geeks up. Episodes 3 and 4, Tricks and Treats, another Halloween episode. And then Kim Kelly is My Friend is episode number 4.
Interesting. Okay.
Kim Kelly is My Friend never aired on NBC. They aired it when they showed it again on FX, I think.
Wait, so this is one of those shows where they didn't air them in order?
They didn't air them. There are like 6 episodes that didn't air. It got canceled, and then somebody else picked it up. I think it was FX or some other.
But if it's the 4th episode, they presumably aired subsequent episodes to it, meaning that it was aired out of order and incomplete.
Yes.
Cool. That's always kills the momentum of serialized shows.
Yeah. So the production code, it's on Wikipedia. It's an order by production code and episode.
Okay. We should check that and make sure that it's right. Yep. All right. Very cool.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.